Hello, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today as we take a look at the life and career of, quote, the sexiest man alive, the one and only, Ravishing Rick Rude. As a child, I despised Ravishing Rick Rude, who played the role of a villain in wrestling. He was incredibly irritating, always boasting about his physical appearance and relying on his manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, to defeat formidable opponents. It is understood that being exceptional in the wrestling ring is a given, but not every superstar possesses the ability to effectively engage with the audience and establish a distinctive persona by using a microphone. However, Ravishing Rick Rude not only had these skills, but he also excelled at them. Rude is likely to be most well known for his tenure in WWE during the late 1980s, which can be considered the pinnacle of his career. As a part of the notorious Heenan family, Rude gained fame for his pre-match speeches where he would typically mock the audience. With Bobby Heenan by his side, the duo managed to form one of the most seamless alliances ever witnessed in WWE, a pairing that has rarely been matched. After winning a match, Rude would frequently select a young female fan from the audience and surprise her with a passionate kiss. In doing so, he presented himself as a desirable figure for women. Looking back now, after many years, I have developed a deep respect for him and an immense admiration for his career. Rude participated in professional wrestling from 1982 until he retired in 1994 due to an injury, with his final match taking place in 1997. Throughout his career, he achieved numerous accomplishments, including being a four-time world champion, a three-time WCW International World Heavyweight Champion, one-time WCWA World Heavyweight Champion, one-time WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, and a one-time WCW United States Heavyweight Champion. Rude also had opportunities to challenge for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship and the NWA World Heavyweight Championship on pay-per-view events, notably headlining SummerSlam in 1990 for the former. Following his retirement from wrestling, Rude transitioned into managing multiple wrestlers. In late 1997, Rude founded the D-Generation X stable alongside Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna. On November 17th of that year, in the midst of the Monday Night Wars, he became the only person to appear on the WWF's Raw and WCW's Monday Nitro programs on the same night, as the former was pre-recorded and Rude had left for WCW in the interim. He was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2017. Rude was brought into the world in St. Peter, Minnesota to Richard Clyde Rude and Sally Jean Thompson. He studied at Robbinsdale High School in Robbinsdale, Minnesota alongside Tom Zink, Brady Boone, Nikita Koloff, Kurt Hennig, John Nord, and Barry Darsow, all of whom would later pursue careers as wrestlers. He shared a particularly strong bond with his childhood companion Kurt Hennig. After completing his studies in physical education at Anoka Ramsey Community College, Rude briefly worked as a bouncer before giving arm wrestling a try. It was during this time that he gained recognition in the world of professional wrestling. Rude received training as a wrestler from Eddie Sharkey, who was also responsible for training notable wrestling talents such as Bob Backlund, the Road Warriors, Sean Waldman, Austin Aries, and Eric Rowan. In 1982, he entered the world of wrestling under the name Ricky Rude, working as a good guy jobber. His first appearance on television didn't go well, as he lost to Joss LeDuc on the November 6, 1982 episode of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. After his time in Vancouver's NWA All-Star Wrestling, he went on to compete in Georgia Championship Wrestling and then in the Continental Wrestling Association based in Memphis. Rude made his first appearance on the May 28, 1983 episode of World Championship Wrestling, where he defeated Pat Rose using a dropkick. The following week, Rude was interviewed by Gordon Solie, during which he talked about his transition from arm wrestling to professional wrestling and how he had to lose weight in order to improve his speed. In 1984, Rude returned to Memphis with a new persona as Ravishing Rick Rude, a cocky and arrogant villain managed by Jimmy Hart. He engaged in feuds with Jerry Lawler and later his former tag team partner, King Kong Bundy. Rude also had a match in WCCW against Kamala, which he unfortunately lost. He then moved on to Jim Crockett Promotions, an affiliate of the National Wrestling Alliance, where he teamed up with various partners to feud with the Road Warriors. Rude was brought on board by Championship Wrestling from Florida in December 1984, with Percy Pringle serving as his manager. On January 16, 1985, he emerged victorious over Pez Whatley to claim the NWA Florida Southern Heavyweight Championship. However, his reign was short-lived as he surrendered the title to Brian Blair on April 10, 1985. Undeterred, Rude regained the championship on July 20, 1985, after defeating Mike Graham in the finals of a Southern title tournament. He held on to the championship belt until October 2nd of the following year, when he gave it up to Wahoo McDaniel. McDaniel was responsible for organizing events in Florida at that specific time. On April 16, 1985, he and Jesse Barr emerged victorious in the NWA Florida United States Tag Team Championship. They faced off against Billy Jack Haynes and Wahoo McDaniel in intense rivalries for the titles. However, they eventually lost the championship belts to McDaniel and Haynes on July 9, 1985. In October 1985, Rude made his debut in World Class Championship Wrestling alongside Pringle. There, he engaged in rivalries with Kevin Von Erich and Chris Adams. During his tenure in WCCW, Rude achieved success by winning the NWA American Heavyweight Championship on November 4, 1985. However, on February 20, 1986, WCCW decided to separate from the NWA and rebranded itself as the World Class Wrestling Association. The WCWA World Heavyweight Championship was given a new name, the NWA American Championship, while Rude was still the title holder. This made Rude the first world champion in the promotion. In July 1986, he lost the title to Chris Adams and subsequently dismissed Pringle as his manager. For a brief period, he enlisted his sister, Raven, as his replacement manager. Rude formed a tag team with the Dingo Warrior, but their partnership was short-lived as the Warrior betrayed him and turned into a fan favorite. In September 1986, Rude made his return to Jim Crockett Promotions and teamed up with Manny Fernandez and their manager Paul Jones to feud with Wahoo McDaniel. Rude and Fernandez, collectively known as the Awesome Twosome, captured the NWA World Tag Team Championship on December 6, 1986 by defeating the Rock and Roll Express. This victory sparked a heated rivalry between the two teams, which only came to an end when Rude departed for the World Wrestling Federation in April 1987. I hope you are enjoying the video. If I could just ask, do you think Rick Rude was a big player in wrestling? If you think he was, then hit the subscribe button to show me how many of you think he was. It lets me know whether to do more content like this or not. Let's get back to it now. On July 15, 1987, Rude made his World Wrestling Federation debut as the newest member of the Bobby Heenan family on Superstars of Wrestling. Rude's first significant rivalry in the WWF ended on November 24 at Madison Square Garden when he defeated Heenan's erstwhile muscle-bound charge, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, whom Heenan had dropped after Rude joined the family. On January 9, 1988, he would challenge Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship in the Boston Garden. He would lose the match, but it would set off one of his most well-known feuds with Jake, the Snake, Roberts. Before every match, Rude would mock the men in the crowd by taking off his robe, probably as a parody of Austin Idol's disrobing routine, and calling them fat, out-of-shape sweat hogs from their hometowns. After each win, he would kiss a woman that Heenan had picked out of the crowd. Rude's specifically airbrushed tights, which he wore during matches, were one of his distinguishing features. Rude attempted to get Cheryl, who is Jake Roberts' real-life wife, involved in the Roberts angle, despite the fact that she was unaware of Roberts' marital status at the time of Heenan's selection. Rude got upset after Mrs. Roberts smacked him and, according to Jake, busted his eardrum, after she rejected him and told him who she was coming to visit. When Roberts hurried out of the dressing room to attempt the rescue, Rude grabbed her wrist and scolded her over the microphone. Rude entered the ring wearing tights with a stencil of Cheryl's picture on the front. Black spots censoring Rude's genital area gave the impression that he was naked, but the live audience saw him undressed down to a G-string. An enraged Roberts charged the ring and stripped Rude. Rude wore an additional pair of tights underneath his ring tights until the middle of 1988, including during his match at the first SummerSlam versus the Junkyard Dog. Rude had climbed to the top turnbuckle and carried the JYD on his back during the match. Up there, he undid his tights to show off a second pair that bore Cheryl Roberts' image. Roberts, who had witnessed the incident from the dressing room, attacked him when he struck the dog with a flying punch. Rude won because of Roberts' attack on him, disqualifying the JYD. On October 24th, at Madison Square Garden, Rude Awakening vs. DDT ended in a loss to Roberts. Rude and Roberts' rivalry ended when Roberts pinned Rude in the 1988 Survivor Series after hitting Rude with a DDT. Rude's subsequent major rivalry started in January 1989 at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, where the two engaged in a superpose down that culminated with Rude striking Warrior with a metal posture bar. Rude defeated the Ultimate Warrior for the WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 5 with Heenan's assistance. However, Rude lost the title to Warrior at SummerSlam of same year, mostly because of Rowdy Roddy Piper's meddling. Rude then feuded with Piper, resulting in a clash between their respective teams at the 1989 Survivor Series, in which both men brawled to a double countout. Rude would go on to have many matches with Piper, including one inside a steel cage on December 28th at Madison Square Garden, losing the bulk of them, before briefly facing Jimmy Snuka and defeating him at WrestleMania 6. Rude restarted his feud with the Ultimate Warrior in the summer of 1990, when Warrior won the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Rude began hard training in preparation for the Warrior, taking a more serious approach that included ignoring women and cutting his hair short. The feud culminated in a steel cage at SummerSlam 1990, wherein Rude was defeated by the Warrior. Next, he was set to quarrel with Big Boss Man, which began when Rude's manager Bobby Heenan began making disparaging remarks about Boss Man's mother. Rude was supposed to be on the Natural Disasters team at the Survivor Series, competing against Hulk Hogan and Boss Man's squad, but he was replaced by Haku after Jack Tunney had suspended him indefinitely. Tunney revealed that Rude's words about the Boss Man were the basis for his suspension, and that his manager, Bobby Heenan, was required to wrestle the Boss Man in his place. Rude actually left WWF due to a disagreement with owner Vince McMahon. After leaving the WWF, Rude tried to join Herb Abrams' UWF. Rude was still under contract with the WWF when his former company issued a cease and desist order, preventing him from appearing on UWF television. He did not wrestle again until May 18, 1991, when he competed in the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance's TWA Spring Spectacular 2 event in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He lost to Paul Orndorff via disqualification. 2 months later, he joined All Japan Pro Wrestling's Summer Action Series 1991, making his debut on July 6, 1991, during a show in Yokosuka, Japan. In his first match on the tour, he and Johnny Ace defeated Billy Black and Joel Deaton. Rude went undefeated in singles matches, defeating Isamu Teranishi and Akira Ta. His final appearance was on July 19th, when he teamed up with Johnny Ace to lose against Dan Spivey and Stan Hansen. Rude also competed in International World Class Championship Wrestling, IWCCW, where he faced off with the Honky Tonk Man. After a year of wrestling on select independent circuit shows, as well as a July 1991 tour for All Japan Pro Wrestling, Rude returned to WCW, which had previously been Jim Crockett Promotions before being sold to Ted Turner in late 1988. He returned as the WCW Phantom at Halloween Havoc on October 27, 1991, and unmasked himself later that night. He led the Dangerous Alliance, which included himself, Paulie Dangerously, Medusa, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zabrisco, and Stunning Steve Austin. Rude defeated Sting for the United States Heavyweight Championship on November 19, 1991, and went on to have other high-profile feuds, including one with Ricky Steamboat. Rude and Medusa departed the Dangerous Alliance in 1992, sparking a conflict with Nikita Koloff. Rude challenged reigning World Heavyweight Champion Ron Simmons on multiple occasions, but was unable to win the belt. In December 1992, Rude sustained a serious neck injury and was forced to relinquish the United States Championship, therefore ending his reign of over 14 months. Rude returned alone in April 1993 and attempted to recapture the title from Dustin Rhodes. After a 30-minute Iron Man encounter ended in a 1-1 draw on July 18th, The two were due to face off in a best-of-3 series on Saturday night. Rude won the first encounter on August 28th, but fell to Rhodes twice on September 4th and 11th, ending his chances of regaining the United States Heavyweight Championship. Rude shifted his focus to the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, announcing his intentions on August 28, 1993, as a guest on then-champion Ric Flair's A Flair for the Gold talk show. In September 1993, Rude defeated Flair to win the title at Fall Brawl. WCW lost the rights to use the NWA World Heavyweight Championship once it withdrew from the NWA. WCW established its own belt, the WCW International World Heavyweight Belt, which Rude lost to Hiroshi Hayes on March 16, 1994, in Tokyo, Japan. Rude reclaimed the championship just 8 days later in Kyoto, Japan. After losing the title to Sting on April 17th at Spring Stampede, Rude pinned him on May 1st at Wrestling Dontaku in Fukuoka to become a 3-time champion. Rude, on the other hand, injured his back during the match when he landed on the corner of the raised platform surrounding the ring after receiving a suicide dive at ringside. Unable to wrestle, he was stripped of the title, with the storyline excuse that he used the title belt as a weapon during the match. Rude retired shortly afterward. Rude collected on a Lloyd's of London insurance policy and did not wrestle again until January 1997, when he joined Extreme Championship Wrestling as a masked man. Rude made his debut at House Party, claiming that his New Year's resolution was to fuck with the franchise, Shane Douglas. Rude went on to harass Douglas, spanking his valet Francine during crossing the line again. He eventually unmasked and became a color commentator, before briefly aligning himself with Douglas and his Triple Threat stable. Rude made a one-time comeback to the ring in the main event at ECW Heatwave 1997 in a 6-man tag team match, teaming up with ECW mainstays Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman to face Jerry Lawler and ECW stars Rob Van Dam and Sabu, only to turn on Dreamer and the Sandman. Rude assisted Lawler in defeating Dreamer and the Sandman during the ECW vs. USWA/WWF intercompany competition. Rude returned to the WWF on August 11, 1997, as the insurance policy of the group known as D-Generation X, which consisted of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna. The term D-Generation X was first used on October 13, 1997. Rude never wrestled while a member of DX, although he was always ringside throughout the group's matches. Rude left the WWF a few days later, following the Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series. According to Bret Hart, Rude remained in the locker room during Bret's meeting with Vince McMahon following the bout in Montreal, and later called Eric Bischoff to inform him that what had happened was real. Rude was not contracted to a full-time contract with the WWF and instead worked on a pay-per-appearance basis. Rude was able to reach an agreement with Bischoff and WCW, thanks in large part to his outrage at the Montreal Screwjob. Rude appeared on both Raw is War with the WWF and WCW Monday Nitro on the same night in November 17, 1997. A mustached Rude went on Nitro, which was live, and began to criticize Vince McMahon, Shawn Michaels, DX, and the WWF, calling the organization the Titanic, a reference to Titan Sports, the WWF's parent corporation at the time, as the sinking ship. Rude arrived an hour later on Raw is War, which had been taped 6 days earlier, with the full beard he had been sporting during his final weeks in the WWF. Rude also featured on ECW's Hardcore TV over the weekend. Rude continued to make ECW appearances while in D-Generation X, since the WWF and ECW frequently collaborated. Rude joined the NWO and managed his pal Curt Hennig. Rude became the first wrestler to represent both DX and NWO. When the NWO split, Hennig and Rude initially supported the NWO Wolfpack in May 1998. However, their tenure with Red and Black was limited. At the Great American Bash, they attacked fellow Wolfpack member Conan after he lost to the undefeated Goldberg, prompting Hennig and Rude to join NWO Hollywood instead. Rude and Hennig were both forced to leave WCW in late 1998 due to injuries. Hennig had a leg injury and Rude was assumed to have testicular cancer, but it was subsequently discovered to be a spermatocele. Hennig returned to the NWO following his injury at Starrcade, But Rude was still unable to appear and was not featured in the NWO reunion in January 1999. Rude officially left WCW in April 1999, and his last appearance was on the April 5, 1999 episode of WCW Monday Nitro, Backstage Blast. Unfortunately, this would mark the end of Ravishing Rick Rude's career, as sadly his wife would discover him unresponsive, and he died of heart failure on April 20, 1999, at the age of 40, just weeks after his last television appearance. According to the autopsy report, he died from an overdose of mixed medications. Rude was preparing to return to the ring when he died. The effects of gamma-hydroxybutyrate, a narcolepsy preventive medicine, could have contributed to his death. Bret Hart has revealed that, despite his womanizing Ravishing One reputation, Rude was a committed family man who never removed his wedding band before matches, instead covering it with tape during any wrestling match he had. Rick Rude's induction into the WWE Hall of Fame was announced on March 6, 2017. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat welcomed Rude. Michelle, Marissa, and Richard Jr. accepted on his behalf. Well, it's that time again where we have to say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed the tragic tale today. If you did, then press the subscribe button to show your appreciation. I don't ask for much, and it is free to do so. Let's get to the 300 mark by the start of June. That's my goal, so please help me get there, and it will help me to get motivated to make more of this kind of content. If there's any of you human beings out there that want to hear about their favorite wrestler or wrestling stories in particular, leave a comment below. Thank you and take care.